just an amazing community.
It is. It really is.
I mean, I've never met people like I've met in this community before.
Really wanting to make a difference for others, really wanting to reach out. I think because people feel so alone. You know, when this happens, we feel so alone and you think you're the only one.
Totally.
And so then when you realize you're not the only one and there's something you can do to make a difference for somebody else, it's like, oh my gosh, this is not just a legacy for the babies who died, but really a mission. I call it, you know, in a simplistic version, it's like making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
But it's making a difference and knowing that, you know, this wasn't all in vain, because it's hard to think that it would be in vain, isn't it?
Yeah. There's it's funny because I mean, I think every parent feels that they're the only one.
Yeah, right.
Because there's no warning. You're not even. I mean, it's not even in the public consciousness.
Right.
Well, what? I want to ask you. I mean, you've been in the community. You know, I mean, I'm a total newcomer, and I've been welcomed with such open arms by all these different groups. I mean, I kind of just want to dive in and ask you, what? I mean, I know what kind of I feel what kind of emotional impact the film can have. What kind of it can help people have a reference point for discussions.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, where do we focus the energy from Return to Zero? I mean, where do we channel all the, you know, all whatever comes from all the energy? Like where should that go? And what should our goal be?
So you go right from meeting to where are we going? Let's solve this problem together, and what's the answer out there?
We can go back. We can go back.
Gosh, that is such a big question to
we can go back. We
it?
can go back to something else.
No, it's okay.
No. I can go back. I can go back to the gift. It's a beautiful gift. It is. I know, but this is but it's the question that it's funny. I was on the phone with the GAPS people, and this is the first question I asked. I said, well, what do we do now? I mean, that was before I made the film,
right.
but
right, because there has to be it has to have more meaning than the big meaning, which is or the big opportunity to spread the word, to say the stillbirth word out loud, to give people insight into what a couple goes through, what their family and their community goes through. And that is worth, a mountain of gold. It really is, because people are so misunderstood, as you probably well know, and don't get the support they need. So that unto itself is like success, awesome.
Right.
But yes, with each milestone, we do have to ask ourselves, so where do we go now? And I don't think there is a simple answer. I think it's a community answer.
Right.
I think we have to craft that as a community. The other day I did a video on for Dona doulas, and I didn't know what should happen with that video. They're going to show it at their national conference, but then it could have a life beyond it. And it's like I needed to do it, to be in it. I interviewed someone Carrie, who had a baby die, and we showed her paltry mementos. I mean, she had hardly anything, and it just breaks my heart. And I thought, okay, now when it was done, that's when I knew, it's like I started to brainstorm what else could happen with it. And so I almost think we have to have people see it and let that organically happen.
Yeah.
But I am one who I've always been that future planner kind of person. I mean, this is like a dream come true. I don't know if you've heard that part of my story here, but this is the dream we had back in 1982.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't hear that part of your story.
So I'll have to share that part of the story. So that futuristic, where are we going to go? I mean, we need our goals, and our goals are the world needs to see and understand that when a baby dies, no matter how tiny, even a miscarried baby, if they're loved and they're missed, then the family deserves the same good support that they would receive if a 10-year-old died or if a 20-year-old died, and even that we're not so good at.
Yeah.
But we should not be judging by the size of the body or the length we've known someone or how long someone is pregnant. And so if we can get at least to that and then grow care and compassion, beyond that, it would be wonderful. So yeah, there's a lot still that needs to be done, but this is a big culminating point. It's a big milestone. I don't know if you have a sense of the history and where we've been to get to this point.
I actually don't. I have to say I was blown away. When we had our loss, I didn't reach out. My wife didn't reach out. Because I think that's the natural. First of all, you feel like you're the only person that's ever happened to.
Exactly.
You feel like you're on an island.
Yep.
And everybody experiences the same thing. As I've said, like, you get a couple weeks of. It's pretty. You get a couple weeks of meals and I'm sorry's and that and then
right.
And then when that goes away, there are it's such a unique loss in the way that people they don't know what to say or how to say it, and some people don't know even if they should acknowledge it,
right,
or don't think to acknowledge it.
Exactly. And that's what this movie can do. If we can get people to watch it, they can realize. I haven't seen it, but I can't wait, because I think they'll come to realize it's bigger than they thought. It's deeper than they thought. It's harder. It's more painful. When someone's pregnant and mom has that big belly, it's such a theoretical kind of thing. We're going to have a baby, but we don't know what the baby looks like. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet. We don't know how big. We don't know how long. There's so many things we don't know. And then when that baby's born, I've said to a lot of folks, have you ever can you imagine getting that baby back in?
Yeah.
It's like this
it's
concept.
yeah.
It's a concept here in a hopes and dreams and joy and a future, but it's a concept. And then when the baby's born, it's real and more real. Real to the community, real to grandma and grandpa, right?
Totally.
But is it kind of not real to them when it's in mom's belly? Is there something about that? Like they first have to transition into a holdable baby.
It does kind of. It's really hard. I think that's part of the reason for why it's so hard to grasp what the loss means, because for the parents, it's very real,
and it's unexplainable.
Yeah.
For these past 30, almost 2 years, this has been my mission since our son Brennan died. Full term, day after due date. I do a lot of teaching, so I'll teach to nurses and doctors and social workers, and it's like I've been searching all these years to find the tools to get them to that emotional part,
right?
So that they can, because I figure if they understand why, then they'll figure out the how to help people. But if they don't get the why, if they don't understand how it's life changing for a mother, for a father, for a couple, for a family, for the other siblings, it's like totally life changing. But if they don't get it, if the society and the caregivers don't get it, then they can't be good help to us. They can't. And so I would read letters from people, and I thought, well, maybe that will touch them, and it did. I'd find a poem that someone wrote, or I'd write a poem, and then maybe that would help. I found a woman in California who did these sculptures.
Oh, wow.
And these sculptures kind of did it.
Man.
And so then she made this into a DVD, and I would show it at workshops and think, well, okay, maybe this is the tool. And it actually has been a very good tool, because it's so so powerful, and it's so beautiful, and it's so raw and real.
Yeah.
And the sculptures go from from
incredible.
Unclothed and vulnerable to clothed and or blanketed, and then and then as a couple, and then back to naked again.
Wow.
Kind of like that journey. And I've said,
extraordinary work.
Yes, it's beautiful, beautiful work. And I thought, well, okay, maybe that's a way that I can get people to enter in to the feelings, to the raw emotion of it all, And so when I do workshops, I usually show that DVD towards the beginning, because it's like, it's like we're saying, society and others, they don't get it. They don't see the intensity of it. But if you can get people to see the intensity of it, and I think that's what this movie has the potential to do. Oh my gosh, people are going to say, I didn't have any clue that it was that big and hard, and challenging and painful.
Yeah. It's I mean, well, it's funny, when I not knowing really about the community and not knowing about all this, and just having gone through what my wife and I went through, I was like, oh, I'm gonna share something that's really personal.
Yeah.
But when you share something that's that personal, I was like, nobody's gonna see this film.
Yeah.
I literally wrote the film. I was joking with my friends. I was like, nobody's ever gonna watch this.
Yeah.
It's really it's dark. It's depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, it
At
isn't.
least parts of it.
That's the thing is, it isn't though. I mean, it's life.
It's love and it's beauty too.
Yeah.
It's the perfectness of those babies and how they change us. And by the way, I haven't said the words that I meant to say early, and I'm so sorry for your losses.
No, thank you.
Yeah. One loss.
One
loss. Your loss. Yeah.
I'm so sorry for your.
Yeah. Thank you.
Losing your son.
Thank you. But I really have come to the place where I realize that if there aren't people who live in the valley, and and kind of climb in and out of that painful, dark, lonely, difficult place, if we hadn't experienced this, then we can't enlighten and help others. And so who would?
You're right.
Who would?
Yeah.
Because clearly people don't get it.
Yeah.
Except for the people who get it, and those are the ones who have lived it. And so I kind of feel like it's our opportunity, and I feel like it's my charge to not hold it in, but to make it a teachable, more than moment, a teachable life for me. But to really then open up the beauty of it and the love, and kind of remind people that it isn't just about death. It's mostly about love.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's that the thing is, it's a love, but it's also a continuing love.
Yes, because we're their parents forever, and they're always in our world.
And they've completely changed us.
Right. And your child's name?
Norbert.
Norbert,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he, I mean, as much as we have another daughter and then a son, and it's like, as much as they've changed our lives, I mean, he's changed it,
right,
just as much.
Yep.
And the neat thing about making this film in our house has been, not only has it opened up the dialogue more between Kylie and I,
right,
but also Roxy, 6-year-old daughter, who's she's got a little scene in the movie, but it's brought Norbert into her consciousness and her world,
right,
and I don't know. I feel like maybe death won't be so scary. Maybe at least she'll have a recognition of a little bit more of how the world can work,
right,
than I ever did.
And we get to guide them. A lot of people are afraid to include their children, and they don't talk with them about it, or they keep them away, and they think, oh, they don't know, which of course is wrong. They know. But then they get to use their imagination, which can take them off into really awful places or confusing places, Right. And I keep saying, oh, if we, the parents, don't teach them about the reality of, life is life and death. It's not just life, it's death.
Yeah.
And so unless they die first, they're going to experience the death of loved ones. So how will they do that? Well, we get to influence how they will do that. And if we can do it in a non-scary, supportive, honest, organic kind of way, then isn't that a gift? And I just had the greatest conversations with my 2 sons over the years. And I remember sitting out in the dark on one's bed while the other one was talking, and we were just so open about it, and from a very, very early age. And so we were talking about something, and I think my son Trevor said, well, but what if babies die, and if grandma dies, and what if you die? Are you gonna die? And so to have that conversation with, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, he was really pretty young. I didn't feel bad about it at all. I thought, oh my gosh, I am so lucky that we can have this conversation, and I can say, boys, yeah, I'm gonna die someday. Hopefully, it'll be a long time from now. But when that happens, whenever it is that happens, because we all die, I want you to know that I will always be with you.
Yeah.
I'll always be with you. And I feel badly that people don't get those conversations with their kids, that they don't realize that this is an amazing opportunity to let it be less scary and to let them have things like that comfort in knowing they're not going to be abandoned. Their mom and dad will always be there, in some form or another. And so it's kind of cool, really.
Oh, it's an amazing doorway into,
Right.
I guess the beauty and tragedy of what it really means to like be alive.
Fully
fully
more fully alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, not living on the surface only.
No, that's the thing is, I was wondering as I was, writing the film, I was like, is it unique to, is it unique to America? Is it unique to, where the time and place we're living that we have such a problem talking about death? So to talk about, infant death, not to mention, stillbirth,
right,
becomes, as I was thinking, originally I'd entitled the film "The Last Taboo" because I thought there aren't that. I mean, what is not talked about openly in this society?
Right.
I maybe there's one or two other things, but I can't think of them right now.
Yep. I've talked with a number of doctors and heard people tell me the same kind of conversation with doctors. Why don't you say the word stillbirth to people? It happens 10 times more often than SIDS.
Yeah.
It happens, 8 times more often than Down syndrome. It happens, there's just so many things that happen less, but they talk about, they test for, they talk about, and they've said, well, we don't want to scare them. I'm thinking you can scare them about, SIDS and crib death.
Yeah.
That's okay, but you can't scare them about stillbirth. And besides, would it be empowering and handling maybe their fears and concerns? And when they say, count the kicks, take notice of your baby's movement, but they don't tell you why, then people have no idea why it's so important. I mean, they don't say some babies die.
I remember when I got my, when you get your, the molars out, they tell you everything.
Right.
They tell you there's a 1 in 1,000 and 10,000 chance that you're going to end up with your, whatever, paralyzed from the waist down. And you're like, you're freaking me out about pulling my teeth.
Exactly.
But you're not going to tell me that there's a 1 in 160 chance that my baby could be stillborn?
And what if we could save some of those babies? And I think we could.
Well, I do too.
If mothers are aware that to watch for slowing of movement and they get in there in time and the doctors do the appropriate testing over a period of time and take it seriously, we could save some of these babies. And so I don't buy that concept. I don't, I'm not going to let that lie. We have to, for me, a big part of where we go from here, I think, to answer part of your question, because I surely do have ideas.
No. I feel like I've got to go back, get more of the groundwork in.
It's okay. But I
jumped into the deep end.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you did. There's no working towards it. You're just in the deep end, which is a lot like what this is like. You're in the cruise ship heading to Tahiti or the Bahamas or something, and you're thinking you're going for the happy place, happy future, and then you're all of a sudden it sinks and you're in the middle of the ocean and you don't know how to behave or how to move. But we need to back to the point. We need to cut the number of deaths. And if people don't see it as significant, if they don't talk about it because it'll scare us, if they just believe that babies die, which is what a lot of doctors say, well, that some babies just die, and so then we're not going to get anywhere in the prevention world. And so this is a part of that journey of trying to get, save lives, is first we have to raise awareness.
Right.
And then we have to say it matters.
Right.
And then we have to say start counting consistently, because they're not doing standardized autopsies or anything like that.
Right.
So it's like this stepping stone place, and it always has to start somewhere. So.
Well, that's a good plan. I like that plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'll follow your lead on that.
Yeah.
No, that would be not that you do this for any other reason than A, needing to do it, and B, wanting to help people and parents and people, through the grief and bereavement and all that.
Right.
But if there was a chance to save some children so that parents and obviously the children wouldn't have to go through this, it's quite something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
it's a pretty big deal.
It really, really is. And so it's activating the audience and the community to notice, to care, to say why, to ask that question, well, why did they die? And what are we going to do about it? And so, we need to start doing some things about it. time.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel that I guess I don't the community has been incredibly supportive of Return to Zero. I mean, so it embraced it so much.
Sure.
But I was going to say, I would imagine there are advantages and disadvantages to having a community with, 1,000 fiefdoms. I mean, which is probably the best. I mean, talk about grassroots. I mean,
right.
everybody. I mean, it does not everybody, but all of these obviously all these organizations, big or small, have started from a personal loss.
Right.
Do you feel that? I don't know. I mean, organizationally, is there? I mean, maybe again, I'm getting into like concepts that are maybe not important.
No, I think they are important. I love I love a lot about America, and one of the things I love about America is the entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
When you think about it, because you don't get that so much in a lot of other countries, especially if they're controlled.
True.
A controlled economy, and so the fact that we have free market, and it comes out in this community too, is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
The difficulty of that is if you have something happening or you need people to march or be or do something or write letters, how do you get to all these people?
Right.
Right. I write an e-magazine. I call it Babies Remembered e-zine.
Yeah.
And the last one I did is resources. And it's 29 pages, small print, 8.5 by 11 of the resources I could find.
Oh my God!
Mostly,
that's
in the
amazing.
US.
That's amazing. Really?
Mostly, not all, but but you go to England and they have one or two main organizations. You go to Australia and they have 2 or 3 main organizations.
Yeah.
And so, if then people are hooked into that 1 or 2 organizations, now they can do e-blasts and they can speak to their people. Right. Well, yes, we have Facebook, but there's how many groups, and that's only a certain number of people. And then, we have National Share, which is awesome, and one of the first organizations. And it might be good to kind of go back and look at history a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
That helps us to know present and future. And, and then there's the Unite group out of Pennsylvania, and then there's the Neophyte out of Indianapolis, and there's the Hand out of California, and then there's a bunch of others out of California, the OC Walk to Remember Folks. And I mean, there's just so many people. How do we communicate with them? Which is why, and learn from them, and to connect each other to each other.
Yeah.
And get people to find the resources they need after their loss.
Yeah.
Which is why, after our last International Stillbirth Conference in Baltimore, that's why we started something called ASAP, Action in Stillbirth and Awareness and Prevention.
Okay.
That we need action and we need it now. And the point of it is to gather these groups and say, can we collect you and then raise you up? So-and-so is doing this in California, and so-and-so is doing, this group is doing this in St. Louis. And
right.
And then talk to each other through one vehicle. So not be a coalition. It's an action and stillbirth prevention and awareness coalition. So that when we go to Washington or when we want to promote the movie or whatever, people can know there's one place to go. So it's not another duplicate of something else, but really it's a centralized place, because we don't have, that's the hard part. In America, we don't have a centralized place.
Well, I mean, that seems, again, looking at the video that you sent over yesterday, and I mean, I see how you get from SANS to that.
Yes.
And so it seems like we're missing that middle step, because
yes.
This is also an issue that, it crosses all political lines.
Yep.
It crosses all geographic,
right,
all racial, all religious. It's not
economic. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing, is it's not. I mean, first of all, it affects everybody, but it's also it's not like somebody. There's no political agenda here other than like helping parents and saving children.
Right.
And who could be against that?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, which is an amazing thing. It's just, you're right. Now it's just a matter of like creating that coalition, which you got. I mean,
that vehicle to make sure that we're all going, that all these different train cars, which have the beauty of whatever they do, adding to the whole community, that at least we're pointed in the right direction and we're going down the track together, not 900 tracks disconnected.
I mean, I've kind of been, learning from another tragedy, the Newtown families.
Yes.
And how they, mobilized so quickly and in shock and in grief. And I actually not quite sure how they, I'm really impressed. I mean, impressed with their resolve and just at such a time. But it's like they, of course, because of an awful tragedy, came together. I mean, they were all part of a school, so it's a little bit easier. Right. But it's almost like if we can...
It's the microcosm, and we need the macro version of that.
Because I can't even imagine if somebody were to take account how many people this has happened that are here in the United States today that this has happened to. I mean, if it's 26,000
a year. It might take 10 years.
Right.
Take 20 years.
Yeah.
We're talking lots of... And that's just the family. That's one couple. Now you spread it to their whole family.
Yeah.
And then you add in miscarriage, which is way bigger than that.
Yeah.
Way bigger than that. Well, I call the time around the time that my son was born, which was 1981. I call that the edge of the end of the dark ages.
Oh, really?
Because prior to that, there was a good chunk of history in America, at least, where they were told they were not allowed to show these babies to mom and dad. Whisk the baby out. They called it the football pass. Whisk the baby out of the room. And then I suppose the funeral director got the baby, and dads usually planned the funeral and went to the funeral. Moms stayed in the hospital. And there are so many people right now in their 70s and their 80s, who on their deathbed are talking about their children and have regrets about babies that they never got to see. And that was only a period of time, because prior to that, as in most developing countries today, and in New Zealand and in Holland, people had their babies at home or brought their death was in the home.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother, after our Brennan died, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, she said, well, I had a baby sister who was stillborn. Her name was Hulda May. And Grandma and I made a quilt together for this big quilt project when we marched on Washington, D.C., trying to raise awareness for this back in 1987. And she said Hulda May was in the parlor, in the bedroom. We touched her, we dressed her, we took care of her. The kids, we got to dig the grave. So see, prior to that, it wasn't this out of the home, uncomfortable situation. It's when funeral homes became more prevalent and babies were born in hospitals. And now that the baby's born in the hospital, whose property is it and how they treated the families. And so they kind of decided. And that dark ages period was very difficult for lots of people.
My grandma was one of those people. She, and this is, I remember hearing whispers about it when I was growing up about,
secret.
Another uncle that would have maybe named, anyway, it was kind of like, there was a name, but it was, I think that must have happened, that she must have been, obviously that was during the dark ages as well. Because I think he would have been born in the around 1960, so that would have been right in the middle of that chunk of time. And I remember hearing also from my uncles and aunts that, she went into a pretty heavy depression after that.
Well, sure, and they weren't able to talk about it. It was secret. Somebody went and took the room down. So in a way, I think the message was, we'll go home and start over and go back to your normal self. And as you and I know, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So so a lot of those folks have a lot of life baggage. I've talked to some of the children of those people who tell me poignant stories about when Dad was on his deathbed. He apologized to me. Her mom had already died, and said, I really messed up. I didn't let her ever talk about it. We just kept it a secret, and I know it was hard for her. It was hard for me, but I feel sad that he wanted like forgiveness for that. And so, but that was the societal expectation at that. And so that's where we come from.
Right.
And that's not that many years ago, really. Brennan was born in, 1981. And at that point in time, we'd never really heard of it before, as most people, even still today.
Right.
And they asked us if ahead of time if we wanted to see him. I stayed there. They, told me they didn't find a heartbeat, and I just stayed there at the hospital. And, well, do you want to see him? And luckily, they asked it in some kind of a way where they didn't get an answer from us. So they left or something, got called away. I don't know.
Wow.
And so then David and I, we had a camera in the car, and I said, "Do you think we should get that?" And he's like, "No." And I'm, "Yeah, you're right. That would be weird." So we left the camera in the car. If they'd asked for the answer, we would have said no. In fact, every question they asked us, we said no to. And luckily, we had midwives, and I think a midwife has maybe a little more, I don't know, kind of organic sensitivity to how to do this. And so when he was born, Monica handed him to us and said, "Here's your baby, it's a boy." And we probably looked upon him for, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe. Just recently I asked my husband David, I said, "I don't remember, did you hold him?" And he said yes, he did. He held him for a couple of minutes, and then he was gone. And so we got no footprints, no lock of hair, no mementos, no literature, no guidance, kind staff, but they were kind of clueless. They had said, well, there's a midwife from the UK who was ahead of us at that point in time. In the UK, they take pictures. Do you want a picture? And we looked at each other like, are you kidding me? No, we couldn't do that. So we said no. We just said no to everything. And so when we literally left the hospital with totally empty arms and nothing that he ever touched, and no one ever saw him in our family, and so we had no pictures, I knew that it couldn't be like that. We got more. We got to see him.
Yeah.
We got more than the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
But not much more.
Yeah.
And so then within a month, I committed that this has got to change. And I didn't see it in that context of, I didn't have a picture in my mind, Dark Ages, we need to enlighten the world, but that's what it was. And so I do you want to hear that story of sort of how it was at
I'd love
days?
to. Yeah. No, this is it's amazing. I'm also kind of putting my own experience on top of it and going, well, this is what improved between then and at least my experience, and here's what didn't improve. I mean,
right, because
mine was 2000 and ours was 2005. But it sounds in many ways like there's some similarities. I mean, it's kind of, which is crazy.
Right.
You think.
Right. And so I, with the support of my husband, I just, once I could get out of bed, in the middle of the night, I started writing a brochure. That was before computers, so it was typewriter and whiting out, and this little brochure ended up being a small book. And we named it Empty Arms, and the purpose of it was, and so I'm a visionary kind of person. I look forward, and I think, how should this be? How should our world be? And the way this happened was wrong, and it's got to change. And I just knew it. I didn't have anyone tell me that. I just knew it. So my philosophy in life is I don't like complainers. And I used to teach assertiveness training, and it's like, okay, what are you going to do about it then? Then if you don't like it, then do something. And my friend came, and I was lamenting. I guess I'm sort of backing up, and I was lamenting about that this was wrong, and we didn't see him. And why didn't I go get that? Why didn't he get that camera? Why didn't I think to say yes? I mean, I was as complicit as he was. I'm not blaming David, but I had no idea. It was a natural thing to ask, intuitive, but yeah, we didn't. And so she said, well, Sherokee, what are you going to do about it then? That's your philosophy in life, right? And so that's why I started to write the brochure. And my dream was that it would be in every hospital in the world. Maybe I said the U.S. at first. Maybe I did. Maybe I said the U.S. But anyway, it grew, the dream can grow, right?
Yeah.
And so I wrote it with you in mind. With the people that I would never maybe know, who were in that room, on the bed, on their knees, in that grief. What would help them? And so I wrote it in that second person. You may be feeling this. And then throughout, I wove our story in italics.
Oh, wow.
just so that they would not feel so alone, that they'd know right at that minute that they got that book lit, that there was somebody else who survived this. And so it went through all the decision making and the pros and the cons, and really trying to encourage people to spend time to meet their baby, to make this as beautiful as possible. And then I went into what happens next, going home and returning to work, and the siblings, and what family and friends can do. And that book should have been given to you.
That should have been. That would have been amazing. It would have been amazing.
And it should have been required reading. And if you can't read it, Sean, to your wife, to Kylie, then how about her sister? How about your mom? Or how about the nurse? Because what we have to read is the decision-making time right here. This chapter right here. That's what matters right now. Not the rest of it. But you need to build, I call it the foundation. We build our house of a house of healing on this foundation of memories, mementos, and rituals. Who they are, how we told people, and all the way through meeting them and the funeral. That is what we build our future upon.
Yeah.
And if it's shaky, if it's not there, if there are big holes, what's going to happen to our house of healing?
Yeah.
So then I started to do workshops all over. Got an article about us, got in the Reuters news service, so it went all over the country. So I started getting calls and letters to buy the book, but also then to go and speak. And so I started going to hospitals, and I made it my mission, as many hospitals as I could go to. And in the beginning, I didn't ask for any money, and after a while, I said, I can't keep doing this. And so I would always say, this is what I normally would love, but I'll take whatever it is, and if it's $10, it's $10. And so I was one of the early people going door to door, so to speak, and we went on a couple of road trips with our kids as little kids, and they'd play in the parking lots, and they'd play with the beetles and the snakes, or they'd go fishing, and I'd go in the hospital, and that was how my husband supported this work. We went hospital to hospital, bringing the books, giving them as gifts, and just saying it should be better, it could be better. And so that rose up then, and then I started a national nonprofit like this the ASAP, like that, but it was a bit early. And so we then were the second national organization that I'm aware of. The first one was Sister Jane Marie Lamb, a nun from St. Louis area, Springfield actually, and she started the Share office. And I have a letter from her. After my son died, I found out about her in spite of not having an internet. And she sent us the first letter, really, of from someone outside our family, giving us condolences and telling us a little bit about Share. So Share was the first organization, and she deserves, I call her the mother of this movement, and she deserves, and her people, a lot of credit. And then we were the next organization, the National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center. And so we had the vision that we had to change things, that the grief we saw in people who did it poorly, like I did, no idea. How do you know how to do this?
Yeah.
You don't. And so then the regrets outweigh the natural process of grieving, and the anger and the frustration just sort of sit there in in our belly, and keep us from doing the good work of moving forward, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so our vision, and this is where you come in. Our vision back in 1982, when we started that organization, and I was a part of it for 10 years, was to change the climate. So we wrote materials. I wrote a lot of things. In fact, I brought some of them, like sibling grief and Another Baby Maybe, and a miscarriage book, and and then I let them sell my materials to help them raise money, because no one would give us any money for this.
No, I know that. Yeah.
And then I spoke all over, and then I would bring the center with me, and tell people about it. So then in 1986, I believe, we spearheaded the first Pregnancy Infant Loss Awareness Month in October.
Oh, okay.
That was our team.
Really?
Of hard workers who then connected, again, imagine this, without the internet. To people
very, very difficult.
all over the country who wrote to their legislators, their congressmen, and President Reagan signed it into law in, I think, 1987.
Wow.
And so we had a Pregnancy Infant Loss Awareness month. We picked October. I mean, I purposely picked it because SIDS Awareness Month was October. And I had this dream that someday we'd be working together rather than competing.
Sure.
And so I wanted it to be, it was a very intentional decision to choose October. And then later it became Breast Cancer Month. And that, unfortunately, is a lot of competition.
Yeah.
But now the SIDS groups are working with the infant loss, stillbirth miscarriage groups. And so it was really, it's a beautiful thing. And then someone gave us the idea, I think it might have been someone from Share, they were doing quilts, that we would create quilts of a certain size. And so we invited people from around the country to create quilts for their own baby or with their own support group or whatever. And then they sent them to us or carried them personally. And we went to Washington, D.C. in 1987 to try to raise awareness. And we walked down, if you can imagine this, 500 quilts being carried down the mall to the Capitol steps where they were laid on the steps.
Wow.
And we held a memorial service. And then we had a press conference and no one came. No press. And so our dream was that, not only do we need education and information to help people do this better, but we need the community to not undo the good work that a hospital might do or that we might do. We might say to someone, well, of course on that Christmas or that holiday or their birthday, do something, light a candle, give gifts, ask people to donate gifts. But then if their community and their family were like, you are wacky, you need to be done. You need to be moving on. Come on, it's been 6 months. It's been 2 years. Then they undo all the good work. And so what we said to ourselves was, we need to get to Hollywood.
Did you really?
We absolutely did. We said, we need to find stars who will step up and stand out and be spokespeople. We wrote to every star that we could think of who had a loss. We wrote to producers that we could, we're in Minnesota, so we didn't know a lot of people.
Right.
We wrote to anyone we could. We made calls. I don't think I mentioned to you that in the beginning of the Pregnancy Loss Center, I was called to come to Hollywood for the first time ever and be on the home show with Gary Collins.
Oh, really?
And so
wow,
we brought
that's
big deal. We brought and that was one of the first times, I think, that this subject was publicized in a national way like that. My husband and I were on, and we brought our baby Kellen.
Wow.
And we had a beautiful interview with a woman, I can't remember, a female host. And she did a fantastic job. And, and then what? Then it was sort of the end of that. And then I was invited a few years later to be on Oprah, and a few years later to be on Donahue.
Wow.
And so we thought, well, great, we're getting the word out. But it's sort of like your question, well, where do we go from here? How do you build upon that? I mean, I think we made a difference in some people's lives. I think we, probably saw some small places or didn't personally see it, but in some small ways, people might have changed. But it wasn't coordinated, and it wasn't, and then I think there was a little more openness to it. We wrote to television shows and soap operas and said, would you incorporate this? No one was talking about miscarriage. No one was talking about stillbirth. No one was talking about babies dying. There was nothing. And then Married with Children, I think she had a miscarriage, and it began to happen, but it was, you just have no idea how this is the fulfillment of a dream of a lot of people. Because if it's not acknowledged in these places where people watch it on television, or become more commonplace, then so many people are out there hurting and feeling really alone. But if you go, well, gosh, didn't somebody have a baby who died on that soap opera or on that television show? As crazy as that is, in America, that's how you spread the word. And so on behalf of all of the people who dreamed these dreams and wrote those letters and worked the streets and grew the concept, this is like a small little token to say, but I can say it in person for them. You're a hero. This is going to be so amazing and a dream come true, and what we need, I think, to move us forward into the next leap, the next decade of building support and love and concern and action on stillbirth and other infant losses. So,
well, thank you.
Bless you.
Oh, it's yeah, thank you. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. We're talking 30 years of hard work. And unfortunately, there was a period of time, which was the good news, where a lot of people would say, I have no regrets. I have like one little regret. They did such a great job in the hospital, and we have all these pictures, and we have all these mementos, and our family was there, and our community, and thank you. We have no regrets or few regrets. And now it's unwinding. We are going backwards. I think about Debbie from New Jersey, who was at the same conference that Carrie was from the Still Project, and where we kind of met up, and Debbie told her story of like 2 years ago, and it's my story. It's almost the same. They were asked though if they wanted to see and hold their baby, but they weren't told why. They weren't told how. The staff must not have really meant it. They didn't ask them again the next day, so they didn't see their baby. They don't have heart. They have a little couple of mementos, and so it's like how from 1981 and all that work we have done, can we get to 2011 when they had their baby die, and still even 2013 when this is still happening to other people, and it's like back to almost the dark ages. And so I think they've cut staff. They don't have one nurse who's the main nurse caring for the family in too many hospitals anymore like they used to. I think they cut budgets, and so they don't give out materials like Empty Arms. They give them a little pamphlet and think that's going to be good enough. I think the new staff aren't being trained real well. I think the passion is waning. I think they're overwhelmed, overworked. I think they still care, but I believe that we're going backwards. And so this moment in time is the time, I call it a rejuvenation and a reawakening. We absolutely have to shake up the world, rock our world around here and say, it's not okay to have families who have regrets that get in the way when we know it could be better. We know families who get it done well do really healthy grief work by and large. And we can't let it go backwards. So the timing of the Still Project and of what you're doing, and with our ASAP.org, let's get it together and go on the same train somewhere, and working on legislation. The timing is really critical, or I fear we're slipping back into some form of the dark ages.
It's interesting. The history is fascinating because I feel like our experience is somewhere in between. It's like we probably We had Norbert in July of 2005, but my experience was much more like, I think our experience was much more like your experience than it was like the good experience that you just described, because there was no pamphlet, there were no footprints, there was no offer of footprints,
No.
there was no offer of lock of hair.
Bathing?
I had brought it, no bathing, no changing of clothes. I brought a camera and snapped some photos, and we had an hour and held him, and then in front of us, the nurse unwrapped him, naked, put him into a cardboard box, carried him out of the room, which was the least human. There's
no excuse for that. We know better. There's no excuse for the pain that causes you and your wife. I am so sorry and so sad and so mad. And I'm getting to the point actually of becoming angry again, because we know better and should not have happened like that.
In 2005?
No.
I shot the scene. I shot that scene in the film, and I had to take it out.
No.
Because it was just, even for me, I was just like, it's too much. I mean, it took the focus away a little bit, and she talks about it like I just talked about it, which in a way is slightly more effective because the imagination's at play a bit.
Right.
So she talks about it. The Maggie character talks about it in the film, but yeah, it was almost like well, we're gonna take out the trash now, rather than this is your this is your son, and it was a complete lack of understanding. not only by that caregiver, if you can call her that, but also by the hospital and by our society. So
we have spent 3 decades trying to change that. This breaks my heart, and that's the kind of story I am hearing right now. We did things like First Candle got some grant money to bring, I mean, we were volunteers, but to bring people together to create a standard of kind of minimal care that hospitals would be giving back in the mid 90s. And so we have guidelines for medical professionals that come out of Health and Human Services, HRSA, and guidelines for medical professionals providing care to the family experiencing perinatal loss, neonatal death, SIDS, or other infant death. And it goes into the basics that must be done: the promotion of seeing and holding and memory making and footprinting. And
wow.
I mean, we've worked our tails off to try to get this to be a standard of care. And in many hospitals, at a certain, probably early mid 90s, it was a standard of care. And to hear you say that is absolutely abhorrent, and it's just very frustrating. I'm so sorry. It should have been better. They know better.
That's the thing. It's and again, I don't want to like color and what's happening in the broader
but
spectrum
that is the
of
broader
healthcare.
spectrum.
But that's the thing. I mean, we went to it was a hospital in Los Angeles. But yeah, it should never have gotten to that point.
No, it shouldn't. And Debbie and her husband shouldn't have had that 2 years ago happening either. And so, if nothing else, this needs to motivate us to where do we go from here?
Yeah.
We need a massive education campaign, and that the ASAP group, that's a part of what we're saying to it. We need to really be re-educating.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's not new. This is not new, and it should be happening standardly. And it's not.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, this is kind of where I think, where the film fits into this puzzle is you guys have done all the groundwork for, all these years. So there's a community out there that can, take it and bring awareness to the film, but then hopefully the awareness to the film that can get, the thing about the film is I think it can bridge the gap between our community and the general population.
Yes, and that's a really good goal. We need to do that, to bridge that gap.
Because people can then say, I mean, it is, and you mentioned this before, and I didn't set out to make a movement film, but I have a feeling I was thought, well, it's a social issue film.
Right.
It has certainly has elements of women's health.
Right.
Of,
Family,
in it,
so many things,
family relationship, the whole thing. But it really, I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the films that could really...
Right. We've had little things here and there. We made our own little mini documentary of families, and we'd show it at hospitals and things like that. But we've never had anything that's got substance and names behind it and, has the potential to be in many communities throughout the country. I mean, really, really, it is a dream come true. But we can't let it pass without using it. So in that regard, I do think it is a movement piece.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to be really, if we get into Toronto or whatever festival we get into, it'd be really, be great to organize also for, I've been thinking about how do we organize just for that. What I want to show a distributor, and we show distributors, distributors eventually buy your film.
Uh-huh.
They're the ones who decide, how much money to put behind marketing, how many theaters that it should launch into, and et cetera, et cetera. But I want to be able to show them at the festival, how big this community is, how passionate this community is. So I don't know exactly what that means, but that would be a good conversation to get started for if we're in Toronto in September or Telluride or wherever we end up being.
Right.
Because I kind of feel like it is a movement film. I want to show them, oh, by the way, here's the film and here's the movement.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. And the whole exciting thing about Pregnancy Infant Loss Awareness Month being October.
Yeah.
And what people are taking away from that and doing in their communities all over the world. And October 15th. And, there's what's been really cool is that there's a lot of folks then who say, okay, well, that part's taken care of. It's like we're building a mountain, or something. And so we got some of the basics taken care of. We got the proclamation. We worked with RTS, Bereavement Services, and they're great leaders in teaching staff. And we worked with the National Share. They had lots of support groups, and then plenty of others to do the first walk to remember, the first one that we were aware of on a bigger scale. That was a brainstorming session amongst all of us. Let's call it a walk to remember, and then people who do photography began to teach about better photography, and music came into play, and now people are doing jewelry for folks, or like Carly, writing names in the sand.
It's amazing.
Just finding things that aren't done and doing them. And so that's the going back to the beauty of America. It's like, as long as people understand, I hope, that to reinvent wheels does not make sense.
Yeah. Given the history, which is amazing to hear from you, can't wait for you to see the film.
I can't wait,
because it's gonna be I felt this, and the producing partner on this film, Paul, who he's not a baby lost parent, feels this, in a good way, the weight of responsibility of this film, because we realize that this type of film, it wouldn't have gotten made. We had angel investors. We had an amazing Kickstarter campaign. You invested. You donated. This is a community effort,
right.
And I don't know that a film like this gets made again. So it feels like it's, we wanted to get it right, and so I don't know. You can tell us if we got it right or not.
I can't wait to see it. I'm sure you probably did get it right, given that you lived it. But yeah, I do agree that it's got great potential to be both an awareness builder and a movement, a chance for it to be a part of our movement and be used as we go forward trying to make changes. But again, I say, if people don't understand what it feels like, and they don't understand why this is so impactful and important and painful and life-changing, then any changes that we request, require, beg for aren't going to happen. So by building that community awareness of how big and tough this is on a relationship and how it is life-changing, we have a shot at least to get people's interest, and to maybe increase the dialogue, improve and increase the dialogue across the country and maybe the world, English-speaking world or beyond. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I think it's also what you just said. It's like people have to feel what it feels like. And they can do that through speaking to you, through reading your materials, through looking at those beautiful sculptures. They can start to feel something. And I think that's one thing that film does, as well as any other art form, I think, is you really can identify with and feel what the characters are feeling. And I think once you've walked that journey in their shoes, I don't think you're going to be able to see or talk about this in the same way. At least I hope not.
I hope not, too. I think we should make it a required video to watch in medical school, and for all the docs who are out there.
I think so, too.
And the staff who care for families, really, because, if they don't get it yet, they better get it now, because things need to change. We need to improve the care that families are receiving, especially when I hear your story.
Well, hopefully we can build off of, what you've been doing so amazingly. All these, I had no idea. You're a very prolific writer.
I have 17 books and booklets that I've been a part of writing. Yeah.
Well, if Return to Zero can help get Empty Arms into more hospitals, that would be amazing. Wow. At least continue the awareness. Anyway,
with the purpose being, it's not about a product or a book. It's really about how to help people do it as well as they can do it, because they only get one shot. There are no do-overs. No, you don't get a do-over. We don't get a do-over.
And you're under this incredible time crunch.
Yes.
Because it's
right.
hours or a day or days or whatever. It's
and that's it. That's what you get for the rest of your life.
Yep.
So let's create the partnership.
Deal.
Yeah.
Deal.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.